Hi everyone, it's Rebecca here and I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to talk about the cleanup crew, or the myth of a cleanup crew in freshwater. In marine it's totally different, so I'm not really going to talk about that, and I don't really do marine or have any interest in it. So this is my tank. It looks brighter on camera than it is. I'm in the process of, I'm going to make some blackwater extract, but because the leaves that make it a bit difficult to clean, and my siphon tends to have an issue with it, so I've kind of like been like, no, I'm just gonna instead, oh, camera's not focusing, there we go, instead I'm gonna make blackwater extract and probably add a few more plants. I really want some dwarf tiger lotus. So I'm going to talk about the cleanup crew. So as you may know if you watch my other videos, I have quite a few of the sort of bottom dwelling fish. Out at the moment is not in view, but I have some loaches, some of my eel loaches, or loaches in the Panta genus, which is called the coolie loaches. So generally Panta Rhei, Panta semicinta, Panta oblonga. And then you get the plex that get put. I don't actually have any corridors, which is the main one, but I just got them one day and I eventually realised after like a year that they're a bit boring, so I kind of I'm replacing more with loaches more so, and other weird fish that I like. Anyway, so the cleanup crew is generally, it's a concept that I believe has come from marine, but I'm really not sure where. It's kind of similar to how the bioactive, I believe, works in reptiles, or what people believe it does. So generally people go to a shop and they'll be like, can I buy a fish to eat poop, a fish to eat algae, and that some way will reduce my water changes. And does that work? No, because firstly there's no fish that eats poo. Why? Well, generally a fish might eat its own poo or the poo of others, but it's low in nutrients and it's just to get a little bit extra nutrients. And of course the fish is going to poo itself, so that waste is just going to be turned around and made even bigger because it's going to need other stuff. Another thing is that by giving them, they need their proper diet, and no fish has a full diet of waste. That's for the bacteria and that's for your filter to do, and nothing makes up for water changes. So generally people go for loaches, corridorus, anything that sort of looks like it's digging for some reason, and these all need their own specialised diet. Generally they will eat small invertebrates, worms, and they do tend to enjoy if you put frozen food or even live food just under the sand or under the gravel. They prefer not to have gravel in the first place, but it's generally a bad idea, and you don't need something to clean up your own waste when you can do water changes and not be lazy generally. Or just understock your tank more, and that will help a little bit with the waste levels. And the main thing that you see people is, can I find a sucker fish, algae eater or something like that to eat my the algae? Firstly, many of these fish don't eat algae, and secondly, a lot of the fish that do, it's not that high in nutrients. It's okay, it's better than the wood eating plex, which gets sold as algae eaters because it's a little bit higher in nutrients, but it's still not the best. So they're just going to cloud up the tank more, they're going to block your filter because the waste from pleco is insane. And also people don't take into account the social side of any of these fish. So the pleco generally are territorial. They will have small territories, none of mine are coming out, but they do kind of storm across the tank, moving everything out of their way. And they're not, usually like, they will just be a bit more boisterous. They won't usually do it to fish of a different shape, but then you get Chinese algae eaters, which are well known for being a bit of a pain. My dad used to have one. He was a bit territorial around his like cave, but he wasn't too bad. But most people had issues with them attaching to fish like gourami, large cichlids, and just terrorising other fish. So not really recommended, and they get to a hefty size, and that's the main thing that people don't take into account, is that Chinese algae will get to, I'd say I've seen them about maybe 15 centimetres, not good with visualising sizes. And then the commonplex, which used to get sold, you don't get them too much anymore, they get to about 30 to 40 centimetres, which is a hefty fish. And if you think how many people have a tank big enough to house one, bristlenoses, they're lovely, they go to about 12 centimetres, 10 centimetres. It's difficult to visualise for me, but they still need, for any of the pleco, really you need over 100 litres, unless you're tempted to go for autosynchronous, which they do need shoals, which doesn't help. But the main thing is the diet. Algae is not the major thing on many of these fish's diet. Many of them will pick at it, especially bristlenoses. Autosynchronous will, but they also need another thing which is important in diets, and that's biofilm. Biofilm is like heaven for most plecs. It's basically a bacterial colony that grows into like a jelly, and it produces this jelly substance to hold it together. So it's this bacterial colony that grow on rotting wood, on the layer of rocks in rivers, and it's really like algae, but it's bacteria, and algae will grow on it if there's enough light. But you also get stuff like protozoa and all sorts of nutrients that you don't usually find in most fish foods in the first place, so none of the algae pellets actually have it. And then it's totally missed out the diet, which is an important thing. So I get Repashy, Soilent green. There's other foods that contain it, I've noticed, and they usually have it under a German name which I can't pronounce at all. It's like, oh no, and really can't pronounce it. But you can't really grow your own. I would love to try, but my wood doesn't grow it because it just gets eaten within seconds because someone finds it. And many other fish will eat biofilm as well. Another thing, well, with the whole diet, is if you're gonna get pleco or any of the algae, what does it actually eat? And generally I look at the genus and then I go more specifically to the species. So paniques tend to be, or panex, however you pronounce it, tend to be omnivores, but they do like wood in their diet, and they will actually eat the wood. There is a study, I believe, by Portsmouth University that showed that they had bacteria in there, something that allows them to digest wood. And the same is for the paniculus, which is the dwarf paniques. They have also, their diet is almost like, from my experience, is almost 90% woods with varying different levels between the species. They do like biofilm, but they won't really pick on algae, to be honest. And then the hypancistrus, or hypans, however you want to call them, even they tend to be carnivores, so they're not going to even touch your algae. So many people get queen arabesque, king tigers, from what I remember, hypans, and even zebra pleco and vampire pleco, I think, are hypans, and I've seen them sold as algae eaters. It's just like they're not even going to touch algae. Chinese algae eaters, Siamese algae eaters, and that lot, they are omnivores, so they like something else in their diet. Some you can use the algae wafers, but they don't contain biofilm, and which is, I think, one of the most important things in the fish's diet. Another thing is looking at, for like, if it's an omnivore, adding vegetables in, but generally looking at Repashy. If you have any of the algae eaters, Repashy has the full diet. There's another brand, a German one, I put in the description, which I found has quite a few different things. So next part of the cleanup crew, I've talked for ages about algae eaters, but that's like the major one you see, especially in the stores. Another one is snail eaters. Why? It's like, snails are generally, why do you get them? Because you've been overfeeding, so you got bad water perimeters, and that's the same with algae. That's usually bad water perimeters. Too much light is another one. even tap water can contain silica. So generally always look at the source of the issue, not try and sort out the symptoms. It's like when you're ill, you want to sort out the source. You don't want to just like, say if you had TB, which is not the best example, but you want to sort out the TB, not the cough, because the TB will sort out the cough. So with snails, they are due to bad water perimeters. So adding in, and overfeeding, so adding in clown loach, firstly, most of those loaches are way too big. And so if you think a clown loach goes to 30-40 centimetres, and then they're social fish, which means you need around 6 of them, which means you need probably anywhere from 700 to 1,000 litres. It's difficult to visualise, especially as you never really see the adults because they're usually dead beforehand. And also there's the yo-yos. They grow to about 20-ish, 15 to 20 centimetres. But you don't want loaches because you need 6 and they're not small. And why use them to clean your, to sort out your snail issues when you could use something else like actually reducing overfeeding? Another thing is snails, the treatments, all the chemical treatments usually contain copper, and loaches are sensitive to copper, so by treating them with chemicals you're just going to damage the loaches. And loaches do limit what chemicals you can kind of treat with. You generally, if you have malachite green or copper, you're just going to have to half dose, which might not always help. So they're just generally not the best idea for things. I've not had a snail issue, to be honest. Generally my water perimeters are pretty good. Well, I noticed they're really good, so it's generally keeping an eye on that and make sure there's no waste, not too much like waste food more so. And no, snails aren't too bad. They're part of the ecosystem in a way if you do get them. It's like if you get detritus worms and stuff like that, as long as they're not too high, it's good and manageable. Like generally the cleanup crew just doesn't work. A lot of people get fish too big for their tank, or it's just unsuitable. If you have snails, assassin snail will do. Adding in more could result in, if you get a female and male, they could breed, which might be a bit of a pain. But adding one, I found when I was younger and I first started, I added one and I got rid of, it stopped every issue in the tank. But I've not had any, and I do miss kind of having inverts, but I don't trust half of my fish with them. Anyway, what else was I going to say? Generally just look at the source of the issue rather than the issue itself. And if you have issues, just ask for help from people. There are loads of Facebook groups, or just look online, do your research, make sure if there's a point made online, look it up and see if it's backed up, because sometimes people say the most silly things. And use your common sense also, because most of these things are logical and you can work them out. Like, it's obvious fish aren't going to eat, not many animals are going to eat poo. That's generally what bacteria does. And it just stops any mistakes. What I say to customers is, if you really want this fish, then get it, but don't get it because it's for your cleanup crew. Get it because it's a fish you want to keep and you have the right size tank for it and can care for it. Because otherwise you just end up with more dumped fish, and these dumped fish do ruin ecosystems. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you like my videos, please comment, rate and subscribe. I'll try and make more, but I am at uni at the moment, so it's difficult to get home long enough to make videos. I'm usually here long enough to sort out my tanks and stuff like that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Bye.